Welcome to the big show, NFL Mock Drafts 2021, presented by the Sportscast. Today's date is April 28th, 2021. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on all your channels to YouTube, Periscope, and Apple Podcasts. If you are on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. It helps us out tremendously. And visit us on thesportscast.net. Also, follow us on Twitter at the Sportscast1 and check out our app, the Sportscast, in the iOS App Store. Gentlemen, it is the night before the 2021 NFL Draft, and I'm really happy to be joined by a star-studded cast here to discuss everything that is this draft that we have tomorrow. Starting with David Heilmann of Dynasty Dorks. He has a podcast and a website that covers fantasy football. Byron Jones, Sportscast contributor and co-host of the Jersey Boys Sports Talk, and Tyler Turner, another Sportscast contributor. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Excellent.
Good. Off another trade just a couple of hours ago. Really excited to obviously get into this. In one word, an absolute crap show, I think, that is going to be tomorrow. But obviously a structure that we have here today. We're going to go through pick by pick. We're going to dissect all the different options in terms of what teams have available, what they may be looking for, what we would do if we were sitting in the GM chair tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, and have some fun with it. So without further ado, again, starting with number one overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that the overall consensus this pick's been in since early 2019 probably, or as soon as the Jets beat the Rams in that late November game, which pretty much settled this one. So starting with you, David, obviously we all know it's going to be Trevor Lawrence, but what about this pick in particular really sets this franchise up for the future? That's really what I'm interested to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, so they've done a really nice job of just tearing it down and building up draft capital. They have a ton of draft capital, a ton of future cap space, and to be able to jumpstart that rebuild with someone like Trevor Lawrence, it's huge. Being able to lock down the quarterback that is, some say, the best prospect since Andrew Locke. Not a lot of teams have that liberty, and they're trying to rebuild and also figure the quarterback. But to do that on day one, I think that jumpstarts the rebuild.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with new coaching staff coming in, obviously Urban Meyer coming in from the college ranks. Byron, what do you think would be his top priority? They've got the franchise, quote unquote, franchise quarterback coming in with Trevor Lawrence. But outside of that, and the Jacksonville Jaguars as a whole, what do you think Urban Meyer's ideas are for the future, both building in the 2021 draft and beyond to make this team successful moving forward?
I think he's been a great coach. Multiple places that he's been. The only issue that he might have is that he did leave a couple places under his health issues, and hopefully that he's addressed that, where these guys are going to know that he's going to be there for these guys in the long haul. That's what the professional level they're looking at. Is he going to be here 2 years from now? Is he going to be here 5 years from now? That's the only issue. He's a great coach, offensive minded coach, but that's the only issue that I have with him, as far as, is he going to be there when things hopefully they don't go bad, and he's not used to, the losing or whatever might happen. But I just want to see him, be healthy. But I want to see if he's going to stay there for the long haul, with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, too, that the only reason he wouldn't have taken this job if they weren't giving him full, complete control. So, yes, he's the coach, but he's going to have some say in terms of their draft positioning, who they're taking. Obviously, I'm sure he played a big role in the free agent signings that they had, although wasn't really impressed with what they brought in. Ty, going to you, I'm curious to learn. And again, I know we're going to move on to the second pick here just in a minute, but just sticking with the Jaguars, sticking with Urban Meyer, obviously there's a trend in the NFL, guys coming from the college ranks to the NFL and maybe not succeeding, especially those like a Nick Saban or people who have been really successful in the college ranks. What is your feeling on, you have Trevor Lawrence now, you have Urban Meyer, you have a lot of draft capital like we've already talked about. what are his chances of succeeding? Like, what do you think the outlook is for the Jaguars 3-4 years from now?
Well, first off, just the most important thing in the NFL is to get a quarterback, and he gets one of the best quarterbacks to come into the NFL the past decade. He also comes in with great draft capital. I mean, he has 5 picks in the top 65. He has 2 in the first round, first pick in the second round. So just the ability to get the best quarterback prospect in a decade, to have so much draft capital, he gives himself a good chance. And it doesn't really play in the toughest division either. So between getting the quarterback, not playing the toughest division, and getting so much draft capital, and having some decent players at important positions, good wide receivers. There's some good guys on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's actually not stepping into a terrible situation. And the big reasons because he has Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And last point that I want to ask David about is, obviously, like I said, this has been a consensus pick for a while, if not the Jaguars, just Trevor Lawrence overall going number one. You know, you mentioned it, the highest rated quarterback since a guy like Andrew Luck. If you had to pick a negative of Trevor Lawrence, what would that be?
Yeah, so I've tried to listen to a bunch of, people that are a lot smarter than I am to figure out what they got to say. And Trent Dilfer, he talked a little bit about how he does hold on to the ball a little long. He doesn't give up on a play. So that sometimes can, result in either taking big hits or, the guy's just not open anymore. So he ends up missing them. So you see some deep ball accuracy issues because of that. But also, you just see him taking some shots you just do not want to see Trevor Lawrence take.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that's going to play into, I think, the Jaguars' plan moving forward is got to protect him, right? Got to protect that asset so he doesn't turn into, a guy like Andrew Luck that played, 8 years, 9 years, maybe, before really reaching his max potential. All right, guys, let's move on here to the second pick. New York Jets. Obviously, this is another consensus, I think, since whenever that Sam Darnold trade went down in mid-March. Ty, let's go back to you. What is it about Zach Wilson that really catches your eye? How does he stand out against some of these other quarterbacks in this draft? And how do you think he fits in the system that the Jets are going to be running with a new head coach, Robert Saleh?
Well, to your last question, I'm not sure yet. I know it's Matt LaFleur's mother who is running the offense, which I think is from the Shanahan tree. So I think that's a similar offense. Zach Wilson specifically, if you just go by last season, the weird COVID season, Zach Wilson was the best of the 5 quarterbacks. He put up the best numbers. He made tons of unbelievable plays. That's the positive. He has obvious arm talent. Kind of reminds me a lot of Aaron Rodgers. That's a positive. The negative, the schedule is horrible. He played against the worst opposition by far of the 5 quarterbacks. Well, Trey Lance plays in the FCS, and he didn't even play last year. But of the other ones that did play, he by far played the weakest schedule. He's also not a big guy. I guess he measured and weighed a little more than he looks. I mean, he looks like he's 12 years old, 5'5" and 100 pounds. But I guess he's 6'2", and I guess he's 215 pounds. But he's not a big guy. Not that really matters to an extent of, if you start getting hit, it does matter. When you're having 280-pound edge rushers like Myles Garrett coming down on you, that's problematic being a smaller guy. So his size would be worrisome. The fact that his first 2 years, he was good, but he wasn't great. I saw him play against USC. I saw him play against Utah, and he did good things, but he made some mistakes, and there was definitely some inconsistency in his play to last year being so good, and he was so impressive, and his numbers were so terrific, and he basically had for the most part, other than the Coastal Carolina, flawless season. I would just worry about him being a one-year wonder playing against bad opposition, and the fact that he's just not a very big guy, especially how the NFL is trending, and the guys who have been more successful, like the Justin Herberts, the Josh Allens, tend to be a little more physically imposing just because of how freaky athletic people are on the defensive side of the ball. It would worry me a little bit. But I like him. He's a good prospect. He had a terrific year. He has a terrific arm. He can make all the throws. So I think he's a quarterback to be excited about. I do think there's some question marks, though. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, all valid points. And I loved your what you said about his arm talent. Just for me personally, out of the top 4, top 5 quarterbacks in this draft, from a pure just thrower's perspective, like when you watch the ball come out of Zach Wilson's hand, it just looks so pretty, right? Like it looks like the Mona Lisa when he delivers that ball. But I agree with you that there are some question marks. And one thing that you didn't mention is I've heard some character concerns as well. Just from some of the things that, he comes from a very well-off family, maybe a little bit, lacking a little bit of leadership in terms of that type of thing. But again, does that really judge you in terms of how you can perform in the NFL? I don't think so. Byron, a question that I wanted to ask you, let's rewind. Let's rewind to early January, February, and you are playing the role of Jets GM Joe Douglas, and you have the opportunity. You have the 2nd overall pick, and you also have Sam Darnold. Would you have made that trade? And if so, if not, what would you do with the 2nd overall pick? Let's say they would have kept Sam Darnold.
Me personally, I like Sam Darnold. I think he's very talented. He's a big quarterback. He's not like he's a little guy. He played against, high end, USC. They played a great schedule. I would have personally drafted a left tackle for this guy, even though they had Beckham. Becton, I think the kid's name is. Moved him over to the right side, put Petty or Sewell on the side, or either or, but just give him the bookends for him to succeed. This guy's in New York spent most of the time running for his life because they didn't have the weapons around him. That was the biggest problem. That they didn't block, didn't catch, couldn't run, they couldn't do anything. And then being in New York, like I want to say something about the other kid, Zach Wilson, is that he's coming from Utah where he lives. He's going to be in the spotlight of New York City. New York is a completely different animal than where he's coming from out there. So hopefully, it goes well for him. But how is he going to act when things are not doing so well in New York City?
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. And just to jump to Ty back really quickly, I know you're known for doing your draft grades on guys. Where did you have was Sam Darnold? If Sam Darnold were in this draft, would he be rated above Zach Wilson based on your metrics?
For me?
Yes.
That's an interesting point. Darnold did not have a good junior season. Well, actually, it was a redshirt sophomore season. He didn't have a good redshirt sophomore season. So I guess if you're going from year to year, there's a lot more consistency in Wilson's last season than there was in Darnold's. That being said, Darnold played a much more difficult schedule. I mean, that season he, whether it's Oregon, Ohio State, did he play Alabama? No, he wasn't in the game against Alabama the year before. He just played a much more difficult schedule. I would say that's a good question. There's some things I like better about Darnold, like Byron mentioned. He's a bigger guy. He probably a little more physical guy. But is he quite the natural thrower and kind of the gunslinger similar to a Aaron Rodgers that Wilson is? No, I wouldn't say so. I might, because I actually would have rated Josh Allen first that year.
Great point.
And I would rate Josh Allen above Zach Wilson.
Great point.
And you guys all Justin Herbert all day for here. Justin Herbert fan 101. I just think when you got a guy that's 6'6", Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, same person, 240 pounds, the rocket arm, great athlete. It just seems how the NFL is trending that guy's going to have an amount of success. When they don't have that, it's a little. Is it just does he have more of a natural ability? Is he just intellectually on a different level than everyone else, which we'll talk about with our next prospect, which is why I like Mac Jones better than Lance or Fields. Because if a guy's on, he's just, you can't, it's hard to qualify that. If a guy's just, everyone else is playing on second base and he's hitting home runs. It's just, that's hard to qualify. But when it comes to, if a guy is big, strong arm, athletic, it just will cover up a lot of warts that he might have. And as long as he can catch on to the game, he can do the ability for him to just break tackles, make plays outside, get the ball down the field. I just think you're safer to go with the higher talent, higher upside, higher ceiling guy than a guy that might have some question marks when it comes to, is he small? Is he not athletic enough? And so I would say Wilson and Darnold both probably are kind of on the same plane. Wilson had the better year. Darnold played in the better conference against a better schedule. That's how I'd say it. So I'd say it'd be pretty close. I maybe would give the edge to Wilson based upon Darnold's last year compared to Wilson's.
I got a question.
Yeah.
You brought up, as far as, Tyler, Zach Wilson's background, as far as, his, might be a well-to-do family. Does he compare to Josh Rosen? That was basically almost the same kind of guy. Are they close to comparison as far as, their background?
Would I compare Rosen and Wilson? No, I like Wilson better. Rosen was someone that I think screamed bust, from my personal opinion. I mean, he wasn't very consistent in the Pac-12.
Right.
UCLA wasn't good to begin with under Jim Mora, but specifically, I did not find Rosen a consistent player during his time. He had a terrible sophomore year. He had up and down junior year. His best season was his freshman year. He was a 5-star kid. But yeah, then all the off the field antics, having a hot tub in his, and I don't want to judge someone by that, but he was a very outspoken about his disdain for Donald Trump, and so he was he loved to talk, and he loved to really show that he knew a lot, and he did. He was a pretty smart guy, but I just did not find him as a player to be good enough. And I hear that Wilson came from a well-to-do family, but the thing is, Wilson is a good player.
Right.
I mean, no matter what, you saw the guy and the plays he made on a consistent basis this year. He was phenomenal. I never saw that from Rosen. He was a 5-star that went to UCLA, but I never saw a guy that I even thought was a good player at the college level.
Okay.
So, I would definitely rate Wilson significantly above Rosen, in my opinion.
Byron, that's an excellent question, though, and an awesome comparison, just because based on the backgrounds, I definitely think that there is some things that those two have in common. Hopefully, Wilson's career is a little bit better than what Josh Rosen's dealing with right now. Gentlemen, let's move on. This next pick, I think we all know it's going to be a quarterback, but going back to David, which quarterback it's going to be. Let's just use the most recent intel that we have. From what I've read into it, it's going to be Mac Jones from Alabama or Trey Lance of North Dakota State. David, what do you think the pick will be and why? Who do you think?
Yeah, so this is definitely where the draft starts. And we're going to pick Trey Lance because he's going to sit for a year narrative. I'm not buying that. If you look at the last 3 draft classes, the only quarterback that did not start a game before week 8 was Jordan Love, and he was a healthy scratch all year, and he also sat behind Aaron Rodgers. Everyone else started typically by week 3. So Trey Lance will start by week 3 if he's the guy, or Mac Jones will start by week 3 if they're the guy. And you're not pay that much to have someone sit back for a year. Mac Jones is what everyone's saying it is. And Mac Jones is a good processor. He obviously played against better talent than Trey Lance played against in college. I know Trey Lance only played 1 game this year, but doing the type of things he did against 5-star recruits and just shredding the SEC is not easy to do. There's been a lot of Alabama quarterbacks that have gone to the NFL and not succeeded. And so people may look at that and say, they're system quarterbacks. They don't do well in the NFL, but they typically do not. They don't play like Mac Jones did. Like, he put up pretty significant numbers, and he played really, really well. Not just because he had great receivers, like, he did play well. So yeah, Mac Jones is, I think people are kind of hating on him just because they like the other guys, and it's okay to like more than one quarterback. I don't think people understand that. For me, it wouldn't be Mac Jones, but if Kyle Shanahan can do it with Matt Ryan and he can do it with Kirk Cousins, and he just thinks that Jimmy Garoppolo, he draws up the perfect play and Jimmy just can't do it. He wants a guy, like Tyler said, that can just process it real quick, do it, and it could be Mac Jones.
So you think the pick's going to be Mac as well?
I mean, that's what everyone says. Like, Daniel Jeremiah is a guy I really, really trust. I mean, he's one that he was on it before Patrick Mahomes. He was like, Patrick Mahomes, a week before the draft, he said, Patrick Mahomes is a first-round pick. I listened to his podcast like the day before the draft. He said, Patrick Mahomes is top 15 pick. Book it. Like, it's done. And next thing you know, he's 10th overall. But he said, my book tells me that's going to be, Justin Fields or Trey Lance. My brain tells me it's going to be Justin Fields or Trey Lance, but my ears and everybody that I know, and he's obviously way more connected than someone like me. So he says, there's a lot of talk that it's probably 90% Mac Jones. And, Kyle Shanahan just wants someone that's going to be able to, he's going to draw up the perfect play, and you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think what's so hard, at least for me, to comprehend, and fair play here, and Ty and Byron know this, I graduated from Alabama. So obviously I'm a little bit of a homer. Like I would love to see Mac go here, but the capital that they gave up to move from 12 to 3, that was that's a lot of picks, right? That's a lot of picks. And you just don't see that move done unless, it's somebody like a Trey Lance, somebody like a, quote unquote potential to be a generational player. Ty, I want to go to you because I could see that look on your face. You're really excited to chat about this one, but what are your feelings about Mac Jones potentially being the pick here? And if so, why would Kyle Shanahan do that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Mac Jones. So I do think that's the third pick. I think it's just, I think who explained it best was Colin Cowherd. I know he's a funny person to mention because he's mostly a hot take, but he said Kyle Shanahan wants a guy that just does what is necessary to get the play done, and a guy that will do it and will do it at a solid level. And he said someone like Lance and Fields might rely more upon their own natural ability and might go outside the structure of the play. And so the fact that Jones he's a guy that's just going to do the play. He's going to understand the playbook on a very high level. I guess he was at the Senior Bowl, and he just was able to basically script the plays himself. And all the other quarterbacks, are just, struggling to learn the plays, and he was basically scripting them and telling everyone what to do and doing the plays. So it's pretty clear that he's just a very high intellect guy, a guy that's at the level of I'm naming Hall of Famers here, but Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, some guys just are at a different level when it comes to be able to process and be able to see what's happening. And they don't have to be as talented because they're mentally that much better than everyone else. And that sounds like Mac Jones. And you even think back to the national title game, Devontae Smith missed over half the game. Jalen Waddle was not even 100%. Ohio State has almost all NFL guys, and Mac Jones kept on shredding him. They kept on shredding that secondary the whole entire game, even when it was backups. Now, Alabama's backups are probably going to play in the NFL. But I'm just saying, I believe that Mac Jones is going to be a good player. I understand why people say about ceiling. He's not a big guy. He's not a super athletic guy. He doesn't have a super good arm. But you're just going to get a player that's going to probably very consistently play at a very good level. And Kyle Shanahan really does trust his own abilities as a play caller. So I believe that's why Mac Jones is his pick. And I'd honestly be absolutely shocked if he doesn't pick him.
Yeah, all really, really great points there. And then just the last thing I'll add on top of that is I'm pretty sure, and you guys can fact check me on this, but Shanahan and Sarkisian are from the same cloth at West Coast offense. So I think, just as you just said, Tyler, like he sees what Sarkisian did with him and said, I can do that. And that's a plug and play guy. And we got a team based on the defense that they have, the guys coming back from injury. They got a Super Bowl caliber team right now. They need to win right now. And, I don't know if he sees the time that it may take to get a guy like Trey Lance to, a top caliber level NFL quarterback. Byron, moving on here to the fourth pick. In my opinion, I think that this is a big question mark. I think Atlanta could go in a bunch of different ways, although in my opinion, I think that they're going to take arguably the best player overall in this draft. And that would be Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida. But would love to hear your thoughts on what Atlanta could do here. Obviously, maybe addressing some of the Julio Jones trade rumors as well.
They could, probably take either, Jamar, Chase, maybe, to replace, Julio, if he goes, or, pick the future quarterback. But, Matt Ryan's still playing at a high level. So, give him the weapons, you keep rolling with him until, the wheels fall off, and pick, probably one of the best tight ends, to come out probably the last 5, 6, 7 years. You got to take him. Got to.
Yeah, I think he's the highest rated tight end since the early 70s or something like that. I watched him just Alabama was up by 20 points in the SEC championship, and Kyle Pitts single-handedly brought them within one score. Like, the guy just could not be stopped. Double covered, triple covered, it did not matter. You can put him inside, you can line him up on the outside. Like, he's more or less just an offensive weapon, more so than a tight end, in my opinion.
Don't ask him to block anybody.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. But how many tight ends block anymore anyway, running those types of 2 tight end sets? David, to you, I'm curious, if you're the Falcons, wouldn't you at least consider a quarterback here? I know, Byron, you brought up a great point. Matt Ryan still maybe has a couple years left on those tires. I also know that they're in extreme cap crunch if they try to move on from him anytime soon. But when are you going to be picking at 4 again, right? Like, when are you going to get this opportunity to be picking this high? If you were the Falcons' new GM, what would you do?
Yeah, obviously, I think everyone agrees that they should try to trade back if they're not going to go quarterback here. I think because San Francisco moved up, and teams feel like they don't have to move up to 4 to go get that. So if you can trade to 7 and get Justin Fields or Trey Lance, you're going to pay half the price than you would to move up to 4 and get the same guy. So I think the Falcons are going to be stuck, making this pick. And if I was the GM, I would have, if you didn't move on from Matt Ryan in free agency when everybody was trading Matthew Stafford's and trading Sam Darnold's, like, you missed out. Like, you can't trade him now. Like, you've made your bed. You go get Kyle Pitts. If you can't trade back, obviously they're going to want to trade back. And, I was talking to my buddy this morning about this. He's a Falcons fan. He said, "Hey man, tell me they're going to trade back." I said, They until we know what San Francisco does, nobody's gonna sign off on a trade. Once San Francisco makes the pick, then maybe somebody says, "Okay, we can do the deal." But until then, Atlanta's gonna be stuck, and Kyle Pitts would be the guy. They're gonna move to a 12 personnel, like you said. They had a lot of 11 personnel last year with 3 receivers and 1 tight end, and Arthur Smith coming from Tennessee, a lot of 12 personnel. They got Hayden Hurst. Kyle Pitts fits in perfectly. He can definitely split outside when Julio misses, a couple games this year, or if Julio is traded. And they can get another receiver later in the draft too, if they do have to get that. But I do think it's not crazy to talk about Chase at 4, especially with the Julio Jones rumors.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on, 4 teams really quickly off the top of my head that I think could be a landing spot for Julio: Green Bay, Kansas City, Baltimore, and Washington. Those are my top 4 that I think would be a good fit. Ty, moving on here to Cincinnati. I think the big question here is, do you go weapon for Joe Burrow or do you protect Joe Burrow? What do you think they're going to do at 5?
What I think they're going to do, I think they're going to go Jamar Chase. Obviously, I'm an Oregon guy, so I love Panay Sewell, and the NFL does too. I just believe it's one of those things. He won a national title and had one of the greatest offenses ever with Jamar Chase as his main wide receiver. So I got a feeling it's going to be Jamar Chase. I also think they got Riley Reif in free agency. They have Jonah Williams as a left tackle. I think that they think they could get a guy in the second round, maybe Alex Leatherwood or a Samuel Cosme, Liam Eichenberg, a couple names that could possibly move in as a right tackle or a right guard even. And I think they're going to go Chase. I would say about 75% likely. And the other 25% is obviously Panay Sewell. I think it's between those two. I don't think it'll be anyone else, but I go Jamar Chase.
Yeah. I totally agree with you there. I think they're going to go Chase. I think that connection too that they had in 2019 with Burrow and Chase was just, how can you replicate that? And not to mention you got T. Higgins. That's going to be a formidable offense. Like, I think the Bengals could really, I mean, they may still give up a lot of points, but I think the Bengals are going to, if they can keep Joe Burrow upright, they're going to score a lot next year. Byron, moving on here, just to kind of keep things rolling. Miami at 6. Obviously, they did a lot of moving around from 3 to 12, back down to 6. There's obviously a reason they wanted to get back into, the top 6 picks here. What are your thoughts on taking one of the Alabama receivers here? Do they go offensive line now with the Eric Flowers trade? What are your thoughts?
I have them taking Chase if the Bengals pass on him, because this kid, he's probably the best receiver, in football, even though he did, set out last year, and he's that good. And you have to give Mr. Tua, some weapons down there. Miami, because they're building something special down there with all the picks they have, this year and next year. So I would, have them taking Chase if he's available.
Yeah. So if, let's say, Chase wasn't available, who would you go then?
Waddle.
Waddle.
More explosive. The return game. Yeah, I would go with Waddle.
Any concerns about the ankle? I mean.
No, I'd be more concerned with the other guy weighing 160 pounds, because they say he weighs 166, but he's probably lighter.
Yeah, he probably is. But Byron, I'm telling you, and I know this is going to sound like a homer, but I don't care how big he is. All I care about is what I saw on tape, and he burned everyone. Just in my opinion, Derek Stingley, who will probably be a top 3 pick next year, top 5 pick, burned him. Like burnt toast.
Just remember, every now and then he's going to have to block somebody.
That's true.
Oh, he's going to have to throw that 160-pound body in there somewhere, and that's might be his undoing. And
if you play him as a true outside, that's not going to work. You got to move him around, or he's not that type of guy. But love your points there, David. Keep things rolling here. Really excited to hear your opinion on this next pick, because in my mind, out of the entire first round, this is the one where I literally have no idea what's going to happen here. I think they could trade out. I think the Lions, could go in a bunch of different directions. How do you foresee this going down? And Ty, I know you mentioned a trade, so excited to hear what David thinks.
Yeah, I'm also on the trade. If there was any pick in the entire draft that I would put money on being traded, it's number 7. The Lions signed Dan Campbell to a 6-year deal. The new GM got a 6-year deal. They traded, Matthew Stafford, and they got, future first-round draft picks. They didn't get, first-round draft picks this year. They're in a long-term rebuild. They're gonna kick the can down the line. And if they go back to, let's say, 15 to the Patriots, I know the Patriots don't trade up, but if they went to 15 to the Patriots and 5 quarterbacks go in the top 15, they're still getting a top 10 player, probably a top 3 or 4 defensive player. They can get Micah Parsons here, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They could still get a top end receiver. There's a lot of receivers on the board. I know that they need receivers, but let's be honest. Like, they talked about biting kneecaps and punching people in the face. I don't think they're going to draft a receiver, especially Jalen Waddle, in the first round. I just don't see it. Or Devonta Smith. Neither of them are, that's just not what their press conference was about. I think they're going to go with something nasty on defense, or defensive line. But I think they trade this pick 100%. And I think that Lance, Jones, or Fields is the pick. It's just not the Lions making it.
Yeah, I agree. And Ty, I know on your mock draft you had a trade with New England as well. So Ty, going to you, do you think it's Trey Lance if the Patriots slide in, or Justin Fields?
Lance.
Okay, and why?
For some reason, I just believe it would be Lance would be the pick there by the Patriots. Just a gut feeling.
Just a gut feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know. I think I would agree with you there, especially with what Denver did. I think Denver was a prime landing spot for Lance if they didn't do what they did here today. But that's something that I think will be really interesting. Now, I've heard some rumors as well that New England's called about trading back. I think that a team like Chicago could be in on this. I think a team like Washington is going to make a call to Detroit. Obviously, it'd be easier for New England to get up, not have to give up as much. But when, especially with Chicago, a GM that's, I think, playing for his job here, maybe an aggressive move to get a guy like Lance or Fields would not be such a bad idea. Moving on, Byron, to you, the number 8 overall pick, the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the trade today with Teddy Bridgewater headed to the Broncos, pretty much clearing out everyone in that quarterback room. So Sam Darnold is their guy, at least for next season. Although I'm interested to hear your opinion. I heard that David Tepper is a really aggressive owner. I've heard that he's been big on the player personnel group about maybe taking a quarterback here. What do you think the Carolina Panthers do?
Fix that lousy defense and take a cornerback. J.C. Horn, I'm taking.
Love it. And what about J.C. Horn separates him from the rest of the group of these corners that we have? Pretty star-studded corner group.
Figure Ethan Sortan, has that. It's that NFL pedigree. His dad, played, in the NFL. When they like his pro day, he was off the charts. As far as what Horn would, speed and jump and all the things he did. The things I saw. So I'm thinking, the Panthers are going to fix that defense and start with this kid.
Yeah, that's a great point. And first defensive player off the board. I think that says something. We're not through the top 10 and 80% of the picks are the offense. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at as we trend in this league. More offensive, more weapons, more, protect our star-studded quarterbacks. I think that's an interesting trend here. David, moving on to you, to the LA Chargers. I think that they could go in a bunch of different ways here. Offensive line, maybe corner as well. What are your thoughts on the LA Chargers and, potentially one of the best offensive linemen in this class falling in their lap?
Well, did we have a trade?
Are you looking at my?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Did we look? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Was that for the Broncos? My bad.
I was like, wow.
Wow.
I know. I'm looking at Ty's draft board here.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a trade there.
He has a trade. Ty, why would they do that trade? What are they looking to come up to get?
An offensive tackle, and I have Penei Sewell. Well, because I had North Carolina taking Slater, and then I have Sewell being available, and LA has to get a left tackle. I mean, Herbert's a huge dude. They can't get beaten like he did last year. So, for his former teammate, seems like a perfect spot. They have the capital. They could give up a third and a third next year, and maybe they'd ask for a second next year. But I think it makes a lot of sense for Denver, because Denver could basically have a lot of different ways that they could go. They could go on defense, they could go cornerback, they could go linebacker, and they could also go offensive line. I actually have them going Elijah Vera Tucker. So I just think it makes a lot of sense for both involved. That's why I did the trade there.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense too. And I think that this could be the run on those offensive tackles, like you said, maybe starting with Carolina, even Detroit, maybe if they don't trade out. Let's go back to David for a second. Let's correct my quick assumption there. And let's stick with the Broncos at 9. If you're the Broncos, what would you do?
I'm taking Justin Fields. The Teddy Bridgewater trade changes nothing for me. They moved a 6th round pick, which, that for me, you're not like Nick Foles got traded for more than that. You're not trading a 6th round pick as your guy. They're paying him $3 million this year. Carolina's picking up $7 million off that tab. Last year, Drew Locke was 34th ranked on PFF. Teddy Bridgewater was 30th. Not a big improvement. All they did was just make sure that they got a backup. And then I believe they'll still take a guy. If they don't take him first round, they'll take somebody in the 2nd round. But they got to have some assurance here. The coach is definitely, he's on the hot seat after a couple losing seasons. And if it's Mac Jones or Justin Fields or even Trey Lance here, I just don't see how you go, okay, I'm going to take Teddy Bridgewater over those guys. Justin Fields is my number 2 quarterback. I think with Pat Shurmur there and the weapons they have, I think they would be awesome. I think for your fantasy purposes, I think Justin Fields would be a monster in that spot.
Yeah, especially with that arm strength. Could you imagine throwing in that thin air? I mean, he'd flick of the wrist, go 80 yards to my boy Jerry Jeudy. But I think that's a really good point, especially if he falls in their lap, right? Like, they didn't have to trade up to get him. I definitely think that that's something they should highly, highly consider here, because, who knows where they're going to be picking again next year, and obviously not as deep of a quarterback draft. Moving on, Byron, number 10 overall, the correctly Dallas Cowboys, picking here at number 10. I think that corner is, in my opinion, is where they're headed, particularly a guy from my alma mater, Patrick Surtain, another guy whose dad played in the NFL for a long, long time. But curious to hear your thoughts about what the Dallas Cowboys are going to do here at number 10.
Well, the coordinator they have now, the guy, I forgot his name, the guy.
Dan Quinn?
Dan Quinn likes long, tall cornerbacks. Perfect. He's perfect for their system. Plug and play, from the first day, put Surtain out there, and he'll be a 10-year pro, probably, all pro a couple times, but, he's going to be a great player with the Cowboys. Sad to say it, but now I'm going to have my Cowboy fans, they're going to explode because I said that.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting too, right? They drafted Diggs last year, and now they're going to have his teammate on the other side of the outside, although I think Diggs plays a little bit of the money for them sometimes in the nickel package. But I think that all the rumors too were that Jerry wanted Kyle Pitts. Obviously, I don't think they're putting together any packages to try to move up to 4. So take the best corner available at that time. I think Patrick Surtain's going to fit in really well. Moving on to number 11 here, which is the New York Giants. Byron, let's go back to you. Obviously, the Giants fan on this call. I think they could go in a lot of different directions too, but I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on what the Giants should do here.
Well, my Giant fans are going to explode. Their heads are going to explode with this one too. You got Waddle is still on the board. You got Devontae Smith is still on the board. But me personally, I'm going to go with Mr. Slater from Northwestern. You got to fix that line. Even though, they're saying he might be too small to play offensive tackle, he's 6'5" or whatever, he's a big kid. You still move him inside the guard, even though, that's not too high to put, a guard, put him at guard next to Andrew Thomas, and you fix that side of the line for the next 10 years. But you got to keep Danny Dimes upright. With all the new weapons that he has, this is sink or swim for him, because next year we could be talking about the Giants get ready to draft real high and drafting a quarterback if he doesn't succeed. So Rashaan Slater from Northwestern would be my pick for the Giants.
Yeah, I honestly think that's the Giants. That would make a lot of sense, right? Especially too, you got to protect the guy you took 6 overall, and 2, Saquon's coming off a big knee injury. Like, you're not going to, try to get a guy to create some holes for him. Your offense runs through him. So, and you spent a ton of money on free agency and a guy like Kenny Golladay. You better hope that one works out, but passing up on some of the Alabama guys, but I think that makes a ton of sense. I also heard that Dave Gettleman really likes Micah Parsons, so I think that could be another option for him here moving forward. All right, guys, we're moving
on this one real quick, Nick.
Yeah, of course, jump in.
So Giants fan as well, so I love the pick. So you got a thumbs up, and I do think they want to trade back, but you're not going to be able to get tackles or this type of an offensive lineman in the first round. There's some really good receivers in the second round. So getting Kenny Golladay doesn't mean they're out of receivers, but it maybe doesn't mean they go round 1. And then their guards were terrible last year, and then now they got rid of Zeitler. So it's perfect. You put Slater in there, then when we get rid of Soldier, move him to tackle, we're good.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, you guys should probably be running this franchise, and things would maybe be looking a lot better. What do you think there, Byron? But
let's give me the money. I'll take it.
Okay, moving on here to staying in the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles. Ty, let's go to you. I think the Eagles are gonna take a receiver here, although I know they took one last year. But would love to hear your thoughts on what you think the Eagles will do here at 12, obviously moving back from 6 to 12.
Well, on my specific board, Devontae Smith's available, so they take him. If Devontae Smith was gone, which is highly possible, because I have at 11, I actually have Washington trading up with the Giants. I in division, I wonder if that would happen, but I have them trading up for Justin Fields. So if that was the case and Smith was off the board, I think they'd take a guy like J.C. Horn, but because they need a cornerback, but because Devontae Smith's on the board, they need a wide receiver. They take him.
Yeah, I think so too. I think corner makes a lot of sense. Definitely receiver. if you're committed to Jalen Hurts, which they actually haven't come out and said, I think that's interesting and says a lot. But you got to give him some weapons, and why not give him a former teammate there? Obviously, the talk has always been, get Tua and some of his former teammates together, but definitely got to invest in Jalen for this 1 year and really see what he's capable of. Although I don't think that's going to work out very well, and I think they're probably going to be picking somebody next year. That's just my opinion. Moving on, Byron. Let's say that the wrongly predicted trade that I talked about earlier kind of jumped the gun here on the LA Chargers. Let's keep them at where they're supposed to be picking here at 13. Would love to hear your thoughts a little bit, Byron, about I know we touched on the Chargers already, but what do you think some of their options are here if they stay at 13?
Offensive tackle to pick the quarterback that we should have had at the Giants, Justin Herbert, because I'm pretty sure they would have probably tried to trade up to get this guy. But you have, he was fantastic. Last year, watching this guy, 6'6", just looked great back there. You got to keep him upright. So I would pick Christian Darrisaw, the tackle from Virginia Tech, to protect their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's obviously an excellent choice, especially with what we saw from Justin Herbert last year, and got to protect him. And Darrisaw too. What a great talent. A guy like Caleb Farley that I think we're going to talk about here a little bit later. Look at Virginia Tech producing some first round picks. I think that's really exciting for what Brian Fuente's doing there. David, moving on here. Let's move on to, you know what? We'll give you the next two picks, starting with the Minnesota Vikings at 14. And then also kicking us off with the New England Patriots at 15. Would love to hear your thoughts on both of those next two picks.
Yeah, and just your Chargers. The Chargers tweeted out a trade this week that didn't actually happen. So not the first Chargers snafu this week.
Excellent point.
But the Vikings are going to take Kwity Paye. They got some issues going on internally with Danielle Hunter. They haven't had, they try to get, Ngakoue, that didn't work out. They've really been trying to figure out that. And Zimmer's defense is really predicated off of being able to rush the passer to help support, the defensive backs. And if they lose Danielle Hunter for some reason, that'll be trouble. But either way, they're going to need someone opposite of Danielle Hunter, and Kwity Paye is top pass rusher on the board for me.
Yep. And I think that makes a ton of sense. I think they could, go edge rush as well, maybe offensive line, depending on who's there. Let's jump right into New England. Let's say that they don't move. They stay where they're at, maybe trade for Jimmy G, something like that. But would love to see what your thoughts are if they just stay put at 15.
Yeah. If they stay put at 15, we still got Micah Parsons on the board. He's a chess piece. They can move around, tag him up with Dante Hightower, who's coming back from the opt-out, and just let those guys run around. Not the best, coverage guy, but you can kind of hide that with his ability to block, which is very similar to what Hightower was when he came out. And they used him just barreling over running backs and things like that to kind of mask his inability to cover, and they got better at it.
Yeah, I think too, if by some miracle Justin Fields falls this far, which I don't think he will, but if he does, obviously that would be a best case scenario for Bill Belichick and the Patriots. But I think that's an excellent choice as well. If Parsons was there or somebody on the edge that they could pair up with a Dante Hightower coming back. I think a lot of Patriots fans don't realize how much they have coming back from how many guys they had opt out last year. Which is pretty significant, obviously, with their defensive woes. Ty, moving on here, the next two picks, let's go with the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. What do you think is in store for these teams?
I'm pretty convinced. The only thing about the Cardinals is I heard they really like Zaven Collins. I've just heard that from a couple of people. I think Mike Fioria was one, and I forgot the other guy, Golick or one of those guys. But I believe they really need a cornerback. The position, they lost Patrick Peterson, so they really need a corner. I have J.C. Horn being available. I have my doubts he really will be, but I have them taking J.C. Horn. If not J.C. Horn, possibly Caleb Farley or Greg Newsome. maybe the edge would go to Newsom because Farley's coming off the back injury. I think Farley has a higher ceiling. Farley might have the highest ceiling of any D-back, but he's had the back surgery, so I think that's problematic. I had them going J.C. Horn. I just have my doubts he's really going to be there. The Las Vegas Raiders, they really need offensive line help, but on my board, I have Sewell gone, I have Slater gone, I have Elijah Vera Tucker gone, I have Christian Darrisaw gone, and I just don't know if the other guys are worth drafting this high. So they could use, he likes athletic safety linebacker types, and well, there happens to be one guy that's really a safety linebacker, Jeremiah Owusa Kolomoa. I think he's a kind of a do-it-all, kind of like Isaiah Simmons from last year. He seems like a guy the Raiders would take. And so that's why I haven't taken.
Yeah, I think those are one thing I'll just add about the Arizona Cardinals. It feature back. What about a running back off the board here? Too early, I know.
Too high.
Too high could be, but I mean, who knows? You pair Kyler Murray up with a Najee Harris or Travis Etienne. You got an AJ Green, Christian Kirk, maybe even a receiver as well if somebody falls. I could see that.
Because you only have so many picks in a draft, and a running back with such a short shelf life, I just would not take him that high.
Yeah,
but you never know. Cliff Kingsbury's weird. He might.
That's what I was gonna say. I know they've done weird stuff in the past, but
in his bungalow, he might do it.
Yeah, and then another guy to look out for with the Raiders, I think, is Jalen Phillips. I think the edge rusher too. I think that would be a really good fit. Byron, we're giving you the next two picks here. Second pick for the Miami Dolphins in the first round, and the Washington football team.
I have the Dolphins taking edge rusher, Jalen Phillips. Even though he has, probably, the medical issues and the stuff in his past, I'm sure, it prodded him and all kinds of stuff with the doctor. So he's probably, good to go. So, I would pick him, edge rusher. And for Washington Redskins, they need help on the offensive line, whoever's going to be a quarterback in the future. And I would say Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State.
Yeah, excellent. I think that definitely, if they can't trade up and go get a guy like Lancer Fields, maybe trade back even, get more picks. But defense is solid for them. They need to build, an offensive weaponry. Maybe look at a guy like, receiver here. Tony, I've seen a couple of times. Maybe Elijah Moore, somebody like that. But I think that's a really good choice as well. David, did you want to chime in there for a sec on Washington?
Washington, no, I think that was, with Washington, I would go Rashad Bateman. I think the defense is stout, and they need to go and continue to add weapons. Curtis Samuel's a good pick, but he's not. I mean, Rashad Bateman offers more, and adding them together with Terry McLaurin really does, give them a nice set of weapons. You need more than two receivers.
Yeah. So just quickly, really fast down the line here, starting with David. Obviously, I think everybody's consensus top three is Chase, Waddle, and Smith, the top three receivers. I think that fourth one is a little bit different for everyone. So David and Byron and Tyler, I'd love to hear, starting with you, David, who your fourth receiver is rated right now.
Yeah, so Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall.
Okay. What about you, Byron?
Reverse it, Terrace Marshall and Bateman, those two.
And Ty, what about you?
I would go Kadarius Toney and Elijah Moore. I think dynamic slot guys just can do a lot. They're very versatile. You can use them a lot of different ways. So I go those two. Yeah,
and same here, Ty. I have those two just reversed. I have Elijah Moore fourth and Kadarius Toney fifth. But I think that's going to be really interesting, right? Like, who's going to be that fourth guy to come off the board? And I think certain teams like certain guys. For example, I've heard the Ravens really like Bateman. I've heard the Packers and Elijah Moore. So I think that's going to be something really interesting to watch tomorrow night. Okay. Who are we up with next? David, did I say, are you next?
You gave me Washington, and then my second team would be the Bears.
Yes, Bears.
So the Bears, I just go. We just did Rashad Bateman. I'm going to give Terrace Marshall. They tried to get Kenny Galladay. They couldn't. So now they get the third guy. They got Mooney to stretch the field. You got, Marshall on one side, and you got Allen Robinson on the other. It's probably need some needs at quarterback. So hopefully they traded up in this one, but I'm not taking Kellen Mond here at 20.
Yeah, I've seen that mock too. I've seen that mock too.
So if you missed out on Kenny Galladay, you're going to get a guy that's a very similar player. Terrace Marshall's, he's a big dude. He wins on that deep third of the field. He's a good red zone threat. He's a good 50-50 ball guy, and he's faster than Kenny Galladay. So, and you get him on a cheap rookie contract. You just tagged Allen Robinson. He could be out the door here soon if they don't, extend him. They need another receiver. So give me Terrace Marshall.
Just real quick, David, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what it would take for the Bears to move up. Like, what do you think it's going to cost them, and where would they need to get to?
Yeah. So anytime I look at trades, like if I'm trying to look at like what a trade would cost, I look at previous trades. How much did it take, the Jets to trade up with the Colts whenever they moved from 6 to 3, or how much did Miami or San Francisco pay to go up with Miami? So I think it would be, something similar to what, if they're going to move up to 7, it's probably going to cost something similar than what Miami or what San Francisco paid to go up to 3. You're going to have to trade pick 20, which is definitely not as valuable as pick 12. And then you're going to have to pair it with a future first, maybe two firsts, or a first and a second. Like, they're going to have to pay a lot to move from 20, because you're asking a team to jump from 7 to 20, and it's going to cost a ton.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting dynamic, right? Especially for guys like Pace and Nagy, who, they're going to be on the chopping block, man. Like this year, they it better work out. So if you're going to make a big move, a big splash, like,
like if the Broncos wanted to move from 9 to 7, it would cost them like a third,
right.
It's just a much smaller jump. And then, the Lions probably get the same guy at 9. So that would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I just don't know how many games you think you can win with Andy Dalton. Like I don't, but especially for people that are playing for their jobs. But I'm not running that franchise. Thank God. Byron, moving on here, the 21st and 22nd overall picks in the 2021 NFL Draft. Indianapolis Colts and Tennessee Titans. Who do you have picked here, and why?
I got Greg Newsome, the corner, Northwestern. They need to same thing. Need to shore up that defense a little bit. Because they're right on the edge. Indianapolis. They're close. And I have Kawhi Payne, Michigan, edge rusher for Titans.
Yeah, excellent choices. I think too, Titans lost a lot in free agency in terms of the offensive weapons. I think that they could look at a receiver here as well. But definitely agree with you on the Colts. I think the Colts are if they can get quarterback figured out, if Carson plays like he did in his, MVP caliber season, I think the Colts are a sneaky, Super Bowl contender, honestly. Ty, moving on here. Let's talk about the Jets' second first round pick here from Seattle in the, was that a Jamal Adams trade? And also the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, the Jets have a lot of needs. They could add another weapon for the new quarterback, Zach Wilson. They need a running back. They also need an interior offensive lineman. At where they're picking, though, I don't like that position. The edge guys, I have guys like Ojulari, Pay, and Phillips all off the table. I wouldn't draft the other guys that high. So I'm going to go with a corner for them, and I'm going to go Greg Newsome. I think he will be available there, either him or Farley. And like I said, Jets need probably more than almost any other team in the NFL. So I would take the best player there. The Steelers really need offensive line help, but they need a center. But I think they can get that in a Creed Humphrey, a Josh Meyer. I'm forgetting the guy from Wisconsin, Whitewater, maybe even a Landon Dickerson. I think they can get that. They can get in the second round. They could also use a guard, a guy like Jackson Carman, maybe a Wyatt Davis. But I believe I have them getting one of those guys in the third round. I don't like it. You heard what I said about running backs, but they need a running back. And I think they are going to draft Najee Harris. I wouldn't. I would go with an offensive lineman, but, well, I shouldn't say that. Because the value of the center and the guard, maybe I would go running back. It's a weird position. Would not be shocked if the Steelers traded back.
Trade out.
I would not be shocked if they traded. Maybe Jacksonville wants to come up and get another first round. Or maybe you have someone wanted to come up high enough to get Davis Mills. Is he worth it?
Yeah, that
you just don't know.
Yeah.
But if they stay here, it'll be Najee Harris is my prediction.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, like the type of player that Najee is fits with he's a Mike Tomlin kind of guy, at least from what I've seen and what I know about Najee. So I think that would be almost too good to be true for a perfect fit there. Although I agree with you, at least, and I don't know how you feel about this, Ty, but I'm under the opinion that you should never take a running back in the first round ever, regardless of the value or who they are. But that's just me.
The thing is, they're just in such a weird spot because the three positions they need the most: the center, guard, and running back. Those three you normally don't take in the first round.
Right.
So that's why they're in such a position that if they can trade back, if they get a good enough deal, you have to wonder if they think about it because they could get all those in the second and third round.
Yeah.
They could get Javonte Williams, let's just say Creed Humphrey, and Jackson Carman all in the third round. And Phil really are the most important needs on their team. So you just have to wonder if they're a team that's going to trade back.
I will say this, though, I think they averaged 12 or 15 yards a game last year rushing. And in my opinion, if you're going to stick with Ben Roethlisberger, he does not need to be throwing it 30 or 40 times a game. So even if you draft Najee and he's decent and not great, but decently good, that's an upgrade on what you had last year. So I just think that may be in kind of their thought process there. David, jumping to you. Let's go with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cleveland Browns. And this is obviously the second first-round pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars in the first round.
Yeah, so I'm going to take one of my favorite players in the entire draft. That's Jamin Davis from Kentucky, linebacker. Daniel Jeremiah was asked, is there who here that no one's talking about could be, a rookie of the year kind of a guy? And he said Jamin Davis. Matt Miller had him as my guy. He's definitely climbing up boards. I don't think he was in the first round, at the beginning of the offseason, but there's been a lot of buzz about him. I fully expect him to go in the first round tomorrow. That's awesome. And he's a Darius Leonard type. I mean, he can run and cover. He can stop the run. He can command the defense. He's a freak. So he's going to be really good. And then Christian Barmore going to Cleveland. He's my top defensive tackle in the draft. He offers a little bit of pass rush. When they brought in Clowney, they got rid of Sheldon Richardson, so he would slide in right there in that spot. So Christian Barmore, I think that's a good value for him.
Yeah, I love those two picks right there, especially I love Barmore going to either of those teams in this spot in the draft. It's a light defensive tackle draft, obviously, in terms of talent and just overall depth, I think. But I think Barmore has the highest upside. And going anywhere here with Jacksonville or Cleveland, I think that's a perfect fit for him. So I love.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Trevon Moehrig to Jacksonville, and I thought about that. But
TCU.
Davis is so good, and he's going to be the quarterback of the defense. You got the quarterback of the offense. I would love that.
Yeah. Moving on, Byron, to the Baltimore Ravens with the 27th overall pick and the New Orleans Saints. Interested to see what your thoughts are here.
I have the Ravens taking a receiver, Rashad Bateman, at this point. They need to give, Mr. Jackson some more targets instead of, always being the Lamar Jackson show. So take him. And then, of course, I have to pick the fellow TU guy, the University of Tulsa guy, finally, Zaven Collins, University of Tulsa linebacker. He's a good-old linebacker. He can play inside. He can play outside. He's up to 270 now. And he still runs well. And I see him fitting in perfectly with that great defense that the Saints have.
Yeah, I love that. I think Zaven Collins is probably one of the most underrated players in this draft. And I think he could easily go from 12 to 20, somewhere in that range, I think. But if he slips past 20, any team that gets him is going to be really happy with that pick for sure. Ty, moving on to the Green Bay Packers at 29 and the Buffalo Bills at 30. Interested to see what your thoughts are here with both these teams.
Well, I'm a lifetime Green Bay Packer fan. And one thing you know about the Packers is you can never predict the draft. Never. Last year they went out and drafted Jordan Love. I mean, back when they had Favre, they drafted Rodgers. Everyone's like, "What the hell?" So who knows what the Green Bay Packers are going to do? What I predicted them to do, I actually have them trading back to the second round. Because what they need is a linebacker. They could use another younger linebacker. They could use a corner. They could use a wide receiver, and they could use a center because they traded Corey Lindsey to the Chargers. So I actually have them drafting Jermaine Davis in the second round. I could also see I have Zaven Collins available on my board. I could see if he was available here, they might take him just at 29. So I actually have them trading back with the Dolphins, and I have the Dolphins coming up and getting Travis Etienne.
Gotcha. I think that's really interesting pick for Buffalo as well. I've heard a lot of connection between Travis Etienne and Buffalo. Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I've heard that, and I heard they could be going running back. I just don't see it. I actually have them kind of maybe getting a prospect that's maybe a little higher than most people are predicting them. I have them drafting Ifutu. Yeah, I'm going to screw this name up. Ifutu Mefawanu. He's a cornerback for Syracuse. Huge guy. He's like 6'3", 214-pound corner. He's a really toolsy, traitsy guy. And I know that the Bills are looking at corner. They could be looking at edge, but I just don't know if an Owe or an Osai would be, or a Tyron might be a little bit of a reach for them there. So I think they're going to go with the long corner at the 30th pick. And no, I don't think they're going to go Etienne. I think they'll wait till like the fourth round to get like a Demetric Felton, someone that's like a Ying to them, Zach Moss Yang.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, and you mentioned a corner there, and I know we haven't talked about him too much, and I wish we had more time to do so. But Caleb Farley, how far does he fall? Right, like does he fall out of the first round? Could that happen?
I don't have him, but I have him going in the first round.
Do you have him going in the first round?
Yeah.
I just think that his upside is the best corner in this draft. It really is. But I think that he had the same kind of back surgery that Tiger Woods had multiple times. And this is not the first one. This is the second time around. So interesting to see how that one plays out. But I like that pick with the Buffalo Bills there. And then to close us out, David, I'll give you the last two picks in the first round. And then I just have one more question for you guys before we jump. But that would be the Baltimore Ravens that traded back in with the Orlando Brown trade to the Kansas City Chiefs to get the 31st overall pick in this year's first round. And then the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, so they're going to use this pick to replace the guy that they traded. So they're going to take a tackle here. I would definitely take either Walker Little or Sam Cosmi here. Walker Little is a guy that's coming up the boards. So if you guys haven't heard of him that are listening out there, don't be surprised if he goes early day 2 or late day 1. Kid out of Stanford. Dylan Raduns is another guy, another tackle here. But I think that they go receiver and tackle with these 2 picks with Baltimore. I know there's been rumor about Villanueva going over there as well, but they need to, replace Zeus over there on the right side. And then Tampa Bay, they signed Antonio Brown. They literally got the band all back together. Normally you don't win a Super Bowl and keep all your coaches, but you also don't keep all your players. And they somehow did both. They got all the, they're playing with house money at this point. So they go and take Caleb Farley in this draft because he's still available at 32. I had him going with an edge rusher, Jason Owa here. I feel like, they could use some more edge. JPP is getting a little bit older. You can never have too many pass rushers, but if Caleb Farley is on the board, they did a nice job in the Super Bowl about hiding those corners, but there really is not a corner on that team that you fear. And Caleb Farley is just, again, swinging for the upside.
Yeah, I love that pick, obviously, if he was there. Jason O is really interesting because I think he's a freak athlete, right? But 0 sacks last year, I'm pretty sure, something like that, like crazy stat. So, but he ran, a 4.3. So, freak athlete, but the production's not there. I think that's definitely a good spot for him with a guy that, maybe has a little bit of risk assigned, but you can take that risk when you've just won a Super Bowl championship. Last question for you guys before we jump. We have 4 quarterbacks that were taken in this mock scenario that we've talked about here tonight. Starting with you, David, do we get a 5th taken here at the tail end of this first round tomorrow night?
Do we get a sixth quarterback?
6, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I think day 2, we see someone go off the board. Matt Miller put his notes out, and he said Kellen Mond does not make it out of round 2. That was what he said. I know some people have Davis Mills ahead of him. Some people have Kyle Trask ahead of all the other guys. So, maybe the Bears or Washington or somebody takes him in the second round. But no, I'm going to say 5 quarterbacks only day 1.
Yeah, because I think the Vegas odds right now is 5.5. So if you take the under, then you'd be right. Byron, what about you? Do you think another quarterback comes off the board before the end of the first round?
I think with 5. That's it.
5. Love it. And to clear us out here, Ty, what do you think?
5.
5. Awesome. Well, guys, this has been awesome. I appreciate you guys taking a couple minutes over. David, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and say, you can follow us on Twitter at the Sportscast1 and visit our website at thesportscast.net. And quick plug for Byron's show tomorrow. He will be hosting the Sportscast NFL Draft Show by the Jersey Boys, which will be live at IL Toscano in Pembroke Pines, Florida, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern with Victor Rocho and obviously our man here, Byron Jones. So thank you guys so much. Enjoy the draft.